All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Daniel Estape. I'm the wellness director here on campus. I'm the person that when I walk by you, you tend to hide your food from. And we have Elida Medero. She's a health and wellness professor, also a nutrition professor. And on board with us today, we have a registered dietitian, BC Foyer. If you have any questions at the end, all of us can answer your questions, but we have a registered dietitian that if we can't answer any of it, she'll be able to answer the questions. So when I mention the word fat, what foods come to mind when you hear the word fats? If I ask you to list some foods right now that contain fat, give me some foods that contain fat. We got bacon. Somebody said bacon. Fries. I heard fries. Anything fried? What all of you are mentioning are obvious foods that you could visually see the fat. But we're going to show you, we're going to demonstrate some stuff here. You just saw Professor Medero show you, show again the bacon with eggs. The bacon with eggs. If we told you to compare bacon with eggs with this pastelito here, how many of you eat these pastries? This is a guayaba and cheese pastry. Which one has more fat there? Ah, some of you know. How much more fat? A lot more fat. But everybody mentioned bacon when I was talking about fat. We know that all these foods, all these animal products come with a lot of fat in it. But it's surprising that some of these foods have some fat in it, but it's invisible fat. You don't see it. It's because of the way they're prepared. They're prepared with milk. They're prepared with eggs. They're prepared with a lot of different things. Butter that have fat in them. You're eating these, you think they might be high in carbohydrates, but they're also high in fat. For example, we're looking at this pastry right here. Anybody want to guess how much fat is in that pastry right there? 33 grams of fat. And some people eat 2 to 3 of those pastelitos. See? It's alarming. Let's look at the cheese. That one has guayaba and cheese. Let's look at the cheese pastry. 18 grams of fat there. And that contains both fat and also saturated fat. And we'll go over what saturated fat is in a little bit. So we talked about what foods contain fat. Fat can be in any type of food. For example, plant-based food, you got almonds, pecans, walnuts, hazelnuts, avocados. The plant-based foods, you find it also in oils, olive oil, peanut oil, mustard oil, and sunflower oil. And we'll differentiate which ones are the good fats and the bad fats. And you also find it, most of you mentioned animal products, so you have meat, poultry, milk, and dairy products. For example, cheese, butter, ice cream, and the cakes that we all love. So fats come with a really bad reputation. Why do we need fats? Some essential nutrients that we need: carbohydrates, proteins, and fat for development. Also, fats provide a great amount of energy, 9 calories per gram. Being that they provide 9 calories per gram, we also have to be careful how much fat we consume. So we should only consume 20 to 35% of our daily calories from fat. And less than 10% from saturated fat. And we'll talk about what saturated fat is. Saturated fat tends to come usually from animal products. It's also used to cushion our organs and insulate our body. The more fat we have, the more insulated we are. To make food tasty. Why do fats make food tasty? Yes, we go back to fat having twice as many calories per gram as proteins and carbohydrates. And that's why we have that innate taste. We're wired to like foods that are higher in calories. So that's basically the answer right there. Now, when we consume too much of fat, what happens? You store it. We can store unlimited amounts of fat. We can't store unlimited amounts of glucose or carbohydrates or proteins. Those get converted and stored as fat. We need a healthy, balanced diet, but when we look at our own diets, let's compare the government suggested recommendations to our recommendation. So look at what the diet is supposed to consist of. Mostly vegetables, fruits, and grains. And you have some dairy in there. And then look at the protein. The protein will be where the fats would mostly fall under, right? You get some of the fats from the other area, but let's look at how our actual diet looks. We replace the dairy with what? Beer or soda, maybe soda for those who don't drink alcohol. Then we have mostly meat. Our plate tends to be full of meat on one side and very little of the fruits and vegetables. What are the different types of fats? So you saw these illustrations at the beginning. The different types of fats we have are unsaturated fats, which we want to aim more to consuming more foods that are higher in saturated fats versus unsaturated fats versus saturated fats. And then we have trans fatty acids, and we're going to go into detail all of these. When we're talking about unsaturated fatty acids, they could be broken down into monounsaturated and polyunsaturated. With the polyunsaturated, there's two that are essential. We have the omega-3s and the omega-6, and they can be found in foods, nuts and also fish. And consuming these have shown to reduce the risk of heart disease. And now we go into unsaturated fats. Unsaturated fats mostly come from plant-based foods. So we have almonds, cashews, walnuts, avocados, plant-based products, plant-based oils, for example, olive oil, peanut oil, mustard oil, sunflower oil, and then salmon, which salmon would have those omega fatty acids that we need. And then to go into more detail into the unsaturated fatty acids, this is some chemistry. You really don't need all of this. It's one or more double bonds between the carbons. They're more liquid at room temperature. The monounsaturated, for example, are olive oil, and then we have the polyunsaturated, which you can find in soybean oils. And here's a breakdown of different oils that can be used. You see that most oils are not just one type of fat. It's a combination of all three, the saturated, the monounsaturated, and the polyunsaturated. The top three, the coconut oil and the palm oil, these are liquid at room temperature, but they're the exception, which would be higher in saturated fat. And then you see some of the oils on the bottom. One oil that's not listed here that's great to use for cooking, I don't know if anybody has ever used it. Has anybody ever heard of grapeseed oil? Grapeseed oil, very high in vitamin E, an antioxidant which fights off free radicals, helps with preventing some cancers. That's a great oil to use. It has a high heating point and is virtually tasteless. So if you want to use that to cook, remember, don't use a huge amount, about a tablespoon. It's a great oil to use. Now let's go into some saturated fats. Saturated fats. We said they come from what? Animal products, mostly animal products. The exceptions will be the coconut oil and the palm oil. Now, when we're talking about animal products, we can also choose some animal products that are leaner and would have less of that saturated fat. Professor Madero here is illustrating we have regular ground beef and we have some turkey ground beef. Obviously, which one would have more fat? The regular. Do you want to show how? She's going to show you now how when you work with it, you could see it in your hands, that grease coming off of it.
This has a film that you feel in your hands. That's going to go into your coronary arteries. And this feels very light, almost nothing. Huge difference between turkey, and this is regular turkey. If you buy the breast of turkey, even better.
All right, so when we're talking about when you hear the word saturated, what does it mean to be saturated? It's tightly bound together, basically. As we mentioned, the saturated fats tend to be more solid at room temperature versus the unsaturated fats, which would be the oils. Again, they're tightly packed, and this means they're easier to freeze and thus are more solid at room temperature. And now Professor Madero is going to go over what trans fatty acids are. Has anybody heard of trans fatty acids? They have a very, very bad reputation.
Thank you, Daniel. Good afternoon. Basically, what I am talking about is the trans fats, which is a combination of the good fat with the bad fat. Because a trans fat, if you look here, okay, you will find it in many different types of foods. So it was a good fat that came from a vegetable, from a plant oil. Then it got more hydrogen into it. And as a result, then it becomes a bad fat. It goes from being unsaturated to highly saturated. But again, this is man-made. This is something that is done in a plant, okay? And you will find it in margarine, in many of the foods that are processed, in French fries. And as you see there, it is cooked by restaurants that use hydrogenated oil because it has a higher heating point. Therefore, they can use the same oil time and time and time again, which is very economic for them, but very bad for the human body. So here you see many of them are in cakes, cookies, crackers, bread, where you would think that there is no hydrogenated oil. And it is really, really bad for you, okay? You can find it in the potato chips, in the household shortening, and all of these different products that are processed. Because if you look at the plant oils as opposed to the fat here in the meat, you have saturated, you have unsaturated. But this is something that has been created through the process of adding more hydrogen, therefore making it more solid. So what you need to know is that the trans fats are basically not good for you. Here you see how the liquid vegetable oil, you have the presence of hydrogen, and that's how it becomes hydrogenated. So many consumers, when they read the food labels and it says partially hydrogenated, we don't know what that means. We have no idea what that means. Every time that you read a label and it says that, you know that you're getting a good oil that became bad. And that's why it's there, because then the food can last 4 months as opposed to 2 weeks. Okay? So that is basically what you need to know as a consumer. Why would the fast food chains hydrogenate the vegetable oils? Because it makes it last longer, because it is more economic for them. It is a solid, therefore easy to transport. You can reheat and reheat and reheat and use it again and again and again, and therefore it's better for you if you're working in the restaurant or the owner, but it is not good for you if you happen to be the consumer. Okay? So if you match these, which would be, from those three, what is the good fat? The unsaturated. Okay? Which one is a not so good fat? And then the horrifically terrible fats. Definitely the trans fat. Okay? So then we jump over to cholesterol. Okay, so why are we talking about this? Because cholesterol is a waxy substance. Number one, cholesterol is produced in the body. We produce this in the liver, therefore we don't need to be consuming cholesterol because we produce it in the body. We don't need any more than that. But when you eat the fats, they will also have the cholesterol. It's not just in the eggs and in the shrimp and in the shellfish. It's going to be found in all of the other foods that have fat. Okay? So we have bad cholesterol, good cholesterol. Bad cholesterol is the one that's going to deposit all of this waxy substance that you cannot see. Okay? It's going to deposit it into the arteries, as you see there. And then you have the good cholesterol, and the reason why you see that truck is because the good cholesterol is the one that's going to remove all of this fat and take it back to the liver so that we can get rid of it. Okay? So the good fats are the ones that are going to give you all of the good stuff. The unsaturated fats are the ones that are going to do this. They are going to increase the good cholesterol and decrease the bad cholesterol. That's where you go into these, okay? The almonds, the cashews, the salmon, in fact, any kind of fish, okay, will be good for you. Then you go into the bad fats, as Daniel explained, all of the different types of fat. And if you look at there, we said that the saturated fat comes from animal. However, if you look at the illustrations, you see coconut and you see palm oil. Those are the exception to the animal saturated fats. Okay, these are two saturated fats that come from plants. These are the tropical oils, the coconut oil and the palm oil, very much saturated the same way as a hamburger would be. Okay, and those will do the following to cholesterol. It will increase the good cholesterol, but it will also increase the bad cholesterol. Remember, bad cholesterol is the one that goes to your arteries and causes heart disease. Okay, then you go to the trans fat, the ones that are produced. Okay, and these trans fats that you see there, your margarine, your French fries, and all of the snack foods, what are they going to do to the cholesterol? They are going to decrease the good cholesterol. They are going to increase the bad cholesterol. That's the reason why it is much better to consume something that will have saturated fat than trans fat. And if you're going to choose, you always want to choose the oils. Remember, the more liquid, the better it is. the denser, the thicker, the worse it is for your body to get rid of it, okay? And you're talking about your liver working on that, okay? So for every 2% of calories from a trans fat that we obtain that we don't realize, which is in all of these different types of carbohydrate foods that you think it's all about carbohydrates, but it's got a lot of fat. For every 2%, it increases the risk of heart disease by 23%. Okay, so when it comes to fats, you have to know that the take-home message is, yes, you can eat fat, but try to eat the fats that are more liquid, less dense, and less amounts of that. The more natural you go, if you can eat an olive, okay, as opposed to eating a piece of cheese, you're going to be 10 times better. You can have the cheese, but again, when you're dealing with cheese, you can have the size of your finger, not all 5 fingers put together, 1 finger, okay? So eat in moderation. Follow what it tells there, what it tells you. Moderation is key. Now, if you have any questions, our registered dietitian is here to answer all of the questions. BC.
I want to know what my good versus my bad cholesterol is. Is the only way to like schedule an appointment with my doctor? Is there like a...
Yes, you're right. The only way to get the differences is to go to your doctor, and when they do a blood analysis, they will break it down from your triglyceride, your good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, and total cholesterol. Yeah, when you do, when you give blood, they don't do that.
A lot of people recommend fish as something to eat and to prepare at home, and I do it a lot. But I have 2 little ones, and I've heard that too much fish is very dangerous for children because of the levels of mercury.
Right. That is partially correct. It depends on the type of fish. If it's light colored flesh fish, they're perfectly safe for children.
So tilapia and things that are white right. Fishes are better?
Snap, all of those are better. Salmon is great for children because they naturally contain the omega-3 fatty acid, which they still need for brain development until they're like 25. Everybody needs it, but for children, it's especially important for them to get adequate amount of omega-3 fatty acid. But you want to stay away from dark-colored flesh fish. Those are the ones that accumulate a lot of mercury. So like the king mackerel, even though it's high in omega-3 fatty acid, it's also high in mercury. Swordfish, for sure, I would not recommend it for anyone, especially if you are a female. So especially female of childbearing years, it can cause spontaneous abortion and things like that. So you want to be very careful. And for children, you don't want them to have it at all.
Does it matter if it's, they say farm raised, meaning they're not eating, is that better? Is it safer?
It's not that it's better or safer. It's just a different method of producing the fish. What we have found is that the wild fish, or the ones that are caught in the ocean, they seem to have a higher concentration of the omega-3 fatty acids versus the farmed ones. However, for whatever reason, people prefer the farmed one because it looks better, it's a little bit softer. The wild one, they're firmer because they have less total fat, but they have a higher concentration of omega-3 fatty acid. The farmed one has more fat, but have a little bit less concentration of omega-3. All right, thank you, guys.
This program is brought to you by Miami Culinary Institute at Miami-Dade College. For more information about the schools and the culinarium program, please visit www.miamidadeculinary.com or call 305-237-3276.